Hello, everybody, and welcome to tonight. Tonight, we will be talking about winter refuge for birds, creating a winter refuge for birds. So, your birds in the wintertime have somewhere to go and be safe and have lots of yummy food. My name is Kimberly Fields. I'm of St. Mary's County Library. I work at the Lexington Park Library. And Barb Whipkey, who is the owner of Wild Birds Unlimited in Lexington Park and the one in LaPlata. She's going to be teaching us tonight. Take it away.
Thanks. Thanks everyone for joining us tonight. So we're going to talk tonight about creating a winter refuge. With this cold weather and the shorter days, the birds need to eat more. And since birds only eat during daylight hours, they have fewer hours to eat in. So it's more important that we offer high fat, high protein foods to help them stock up for those cold winter nights. So we're going to cover some of those foods that you can offer to help them make it through the nights. We're going to offer some shelter options that you can offer them and just everything you can do to help them make it through the nights. So I'm going to share my screen here. So creating a winter refuge. So we're going to talk about how you can turn your dreary backyard into a winter wonderland. And I was talking this to Kimberly, and if you remember back a year ago on this day, we were all pretty much snowed in. So we are fortunate, as chilly as it was today, although it warmed up. Last year we were snowed in. So we can be happy that we don't have all that snow, I guess, although that snow does bring us some great bird activity. So who are we going to see? Let me see if I can get that to move out of the way. Who are we going to see this year? We're going to see all of those usual visitors. Our cardinals are going to be here. We're very fortunate in Southern Maryland that most of our birds stay year-round. We have some that take off and go where it's warmer. But our cardinals, our tufted titmouse, they're going to be here. Goldfinches, a lot of people think the goldfinches leave. Goldfinches are still here. They have put on their winter plumage, which is kind of an olive drab color. But you do want to keep those finch feeders out because those goldfinches are still there. If you put those finches feeders back out, you're going to see those goldfinches coming back to your feeders. Carolina wrens are here. They're the little brown birds with the little tail that sticks up in the air. Those are the ones that wake you up first thing in the morning. Very loud, very vocal. That male Carolina wren has about 40 different songs that he sings, and he likes to start singing them about 5:30 in the morning. So those Carolina wrens are still here. Red-bellied woodpeckers. I know they've been absent from your feeders, but they have just started moving back to the feeders this week. Carolina chickadees, of course, they're always here. Mourning doves, they're always up for a free meal. House finches are always here. House finches are a cool little bird that never forget where to find food. So once a house finch has found your food, they're never going to forget where to find that feeder. And then blue jays. You may or may not be seeing blue jays right now. There's still a lot of acorns out there in the woods. So until they finished up those acorns, they won't be back. But once they're done with those acorns, they'll be moving back. My grandson, who through the woods lives less than a quarter mile from me, his blue jays are back. Mine are not back yet. So it really depends on what your yard is like as to whether the blue jays are back yet. So if you're in an area that's not heavily wooded, your blue jays may have moved back. Lots of heavy seeds with heavy nuts in there or peanuts in the shell will bring those blue jays to you. And then who else are we going to see? Our northern friends that always come and spend the winter with us. On the left is our white-throated sparrow. They have that sparrow look with the striping on the back, but then the obvious little white throat. And then on the right is the dark-eyed junco. You're going to see that almond color bill, gray or black on the back, and then white underneath. They are here. A lot of people think of them as only being ground feeders. However, if you offer a tray feeder, you can entice them up to your feeders. So I always recommend adding a tray feeder to your feeding station. That's a great way to bring those birds up to your feeders. And then who else? These are ones that often we see. That's our only migrating woodpecker on the left. That is a yellow-bellied sapsucker. When I was a kid, my mother would always call us a yellow-bellied sapsucker. I had no idea there really was such a thing as a yellow-bellied sapsucker. But that is the yellow-bellied sapsucker. If you catch them underneath, they've got a little bit of a yellow tinge to their belly. They love, love, love bark butter on a tree. If you look at that tree closely, you're going to see, let me get my mouse over there, these straight lines on the tree. And they tend to just be little drill holes in a straight line. That is a classic sign that you have a yellow belly sapsucker in your yard. So go out, check your trees, and watch for those lines. They will drill those holes so that the sap will run, bring the insects in, and then they'll come back and snatch up those insects. But it's always going to be straight lines, but watch for those. Adding bark butter to a tree, and then you can even press seed into it if you want. You may be thinking, yeah, if I add that bark butter to that tree, those squirrels will be all over it. But we do have bark butter in a hot pepper formula as well. And honestly, that's what is usually on that tree. That's actually regular there, but we have it in a hot pepper formula as well, which keeps the squirrels. I'll watch my squirrels run laps around that tree with the hot pepper in it, and they don't even realize that there's food on there. But you just take a fork and spread it right on there. In the center there is what we call a yellow-rumped warbler. Right at the base of their tail, they have a little yellow spot, which has earned them the nickname butterbutts because it's right where that tail meets the body. And it just looks like a little pat of butter. So they get called butterbutts. On the right-hand side is a pine warbler. I have a crazy amount of these in my yard, but I also have a lot of pine trees. And they're just a beautiful yellow in the winter months. And then they've got that gray wing with the two white stripes. If you notice, they have a pointed beak on them, as do as do the woodpeckers. That's a sign that the bird you're looking at is an insect eater. When you see a bird with a pointed beak, you know that's an insect eater. So those birds you want to offer suet to them, whether it be bark butter bits, suet balls, suet in the block, anything like that. Suet is what you want to offer to insect-loving birds. And those insect-loving birds, remember, are going to have that pointed bill on them. And just in case you aren't familiar with what suet is the little, you're familiar with the little blocks here that you put in. Green cages is often what they'll come in for feeding them. And again, we have suet in a hot pepper or regular that you can use. Okay, but this is what we call a special winter. This is an eruption year, which means there is a shortage of food up in the north. So, sad for the birds, but yay for us. Some of the birds from the north are coming to spend their winter with us, birds that we wouldn't normally see. So let's look at who those birds are. On the left here, you see sitting on this little clear tray. Let me find my mouse. This little guy right here is a male purple finch. They kind of look to me like they're a chocolate covered bird and they've been dipped in raspberry paint. And that's going to be our purple finch. They are larger than our house finch. So the house finch is a thinner bird. When you see the two of them out there, you'll be able to tell, I promise you. At first, everybody's like, is that a purple finch or a house finch? But the first time you really see a purple finch, you will know. The body size is much larger on a purple finch, and it is more of a raspberry purple than the red of a house finch. So we have purple finches already showing up at feeders, and then underneath that purple is more of a chocolate where you can see on this house finch, it's a tan color. And then we also are seeing quite a few of the red-breasted nuthatches. So we also have a white-breasted nuthatch that's here year-round. But the red-breasted nuthatch has the obvious red breast, and then it has the black that comes through the eyeliner. So red-breasted nuthatches are really cool little birds. They are not afraid of you. They're very comfortable coming to the feeders right when you're standing at the feeders. They love peanut splits, which is what is in that feeder there. That's actually one of my favorite feeders. I like to add a tray onto it, which then lets a lot of other birds feed from it as well. You can put peanut splits in there. There's another food that we'll talk about a little bit later that I also put in that one. These guys are there. If you walk out anywhere where there's woods around, you will hear them. They're going to sound like a dog squeaky toy. If you have a dog or you've heard a dog that gets that squeaky toy and just keeps squeaking it obnoxiously, that is what a red-breasted nuthatch sounds like. And so anytime you're around the woods right now, we are hearing them nonstop. In the last week, they've just started moving to our feeders. Again, it's a case of whenever they're finishing up the natural foods that are out there, that's what brings them back to our feeders. This year is what we call a mast year, where the trees have overproduced nuts and berries. So the birds have had plenty to eat in nature. So that's why they had not been at our feeders. But now, the last few weeks, as it has gotten colder, they've started finishing up those foods. They're starting to move back to our feeders. So we're starting to get lots of bird activity. So I encourage you to put some peanut splits out there, which is basically just shelled peanuts, and then they're split in half. These red-breasted nuthatches absolutely love it. As far as the purple finches, they love safflower, which is a white seed, very hard seed, and they also like sunflower chips or just good old-fashioned finch blend, which is a mixture of Niger and sunflower chips. So any of those three foods are perfect for your purple finches. You'll also find if you use that safflower, the cardinals love that one. It's another good reason to put a tray on there because then that allows the cardinals to eat from that feeder as well. Okay, so what are some foods that you want to offer in the winter? So we talked about high-fat foods are very important. If you offer high-fat foods, the birds don't have to eat as much food. When they have to eat more, they're expending more energy, cracking the shells of that food, so it becomes a vicious cycle. If they expend more energy, they have to eat more to make up for the energy they expended. So I encourage you to use that high-fat food, and especially if you can offer things that is already shelled. So those peanut splits we talked about, by it being food without a shell, they're not having to expend any energy. We offer a winter super blend. If you're shopping in our store here, That one is already formulated with a mixture of very high fat foods. The peanut splits we talked about. Tree Nutty Plus, that's the one I kind of mentioned. We would talk about in a little bit more detail. That black feeder I showed you that had the peanut splits, I love to use Tree Nutty Plus in that feeder. Let me grab a bag of that. So this is what Tree Nutty Plus looks like. So this one is, if you get snowed in, this is that food you want to have on hand for yourself. This is a mixture of raisins, peanut splits, sunflower chips, sunflowers in the shell. So it's a good mixture of everything. I do caution people though, if you have dogs who eat under your feeder, you're going to stay away from this shell or this seed because of those raisins. Grapes are toxic to dogs, hence the raisins are toxic. So if your dogs are eating under the feeder, you're going to switch and use No Mess Plus, which is my favorite seed of all types. No Mess Plus is a sunflower already shelled, cranberries, cherries, peanuts, tree nuts. Another good one if you get snowed in and you have to resort to eating birdseed. So if you're trying to replicate No Mess Plus when you're shopping somewhere else, you're going to be looking for things like sunflower that's already been shelled. Look for something with a fruit mix in there. Peanuts, tree nuts, that's your high fat foods that you're looking for. And then the No Mess Plus and the Tree Nutty Plus both have bark butter bits in it. Let me grab a bag of that. Bark butter bits is going to be a suet nugget. So that's just going to add another level of fat to their food. And that's mixed in with both that No Mess Plus and the Tree Nutty Plus. And that has added calcium in it as well. So again, it's just one more level of fat that you're offering to the birds. And then another seed that you can use would be choice, which is, if you're trying to replicate that, you're looking for black oil, safflower, peanuts out of the shell, things like that to make a blend. So on that top chart we have there, I would choose at least two options as you're making your smorgasbord for the birds for the winter. Of that, when I look at that in my yard, I have the top four going in my feeders, and that's in multiple feeders. So I have everything, but the choice is what I'm feeding to my birds. And then we're going to jump down to the suet. I feed actually all of those suets in my yard. So suet cakes, I showed you the little square. And then I recommend looking for a feeder, something this style. If you notice, it has the square, but it also has this little drop down at the bottom. What that does is allows you, when the woodpecker's eating, woodpeckers use their tail for balance. So instead of just having the square like the green cages we're all familiar with that have been around for hundreds of years, this tail allows those woodpeckers to use their tail for balance. So when you're looking for a suet cage, I recommend looking for something this style so it allows those larger woodpeckers to eat. And then a suet cylinder would be something like this. If you're feeding something this style, this is a great one. This is a no melt variety, so you can use it year round. Suet balls are going to be something like these little guys. And I showed you, there was a picture we had seen, the one I showed you, the little yellow rump warbler, the butterbutt. He was eating some of those bark butter or the suet balls. So that's another one. Then the bark butter bits we talked about and the bark butter. So of those suets, you want to choose a minimum of 2 types of suet to be offering in the winter months. But honestly, with suet, you cannot overdo it because everybody is looking for suet this time of year. And then the one thing I will mention as you go into spring, you want to continue offering suet because baby birds get all of their moisture from their food. So the adults will, if you're offering suet, the adults will come and get some of that suet and take to feed to the baby birds. The cool thing, if they're taking, you're seeing those woodpeckers, chickadees, whoever, taking mouthful of suet back away from your feeders, they're taking it to a nest to feed the young come spring. So they're also going to turn around and bring those baby birds to your feeders to show them where they can find their own food. So don't stop feeding suet when it warms up. Keep going with that suet. You can get a no melt variety of suet when it starts to warm up, but keep going with that suet. You don't have to feed as much, but definitely consider feeding suet through the summer months. And then a couple other things I highly recommend. We talked about the finch blend already because your finch are still there. They're just in their non-sexy plumage. They don't have to try to pick up a mate this year, so they don't have to have that pretty yellow feathers on. Offer mealworms. A few of our customers are seeing Baltimore Orioles right now. I know we rarely get Baltimore Orioles, but people are seeing them this winter. And they're often coming to the mealworms or the peanut splits right now through the winter months. So consider getting those out there. I recommend putting those in a tray, something like this. You can do it without the roof, but with rain, snow, that type of stuff, I recommend adding a weather guard to it. But that's where you can put some mealworms, bark butter bits, things like that, peanut splits. But we do have a few people that are seeing the Baltimore Orioles come in. And then cylinders. Anybody who has fed cylinders will tell you how convenient they are. It's pressed seed formed together with a gelatin, and you just drop them onto a feeder and hang it up. And so you don't have to change it as often. Find one here. So here it is hanging on a feeder, has a nice little roof, perch for the birds to land on. And that's a 2-pound cylinder there, 1.75, I guess. So you don't have to change it near as often. One of the cool things is the birds have to work a little harder to get that seed off, which means they stay around longer, so you get to see the birds longer. All right. And that particular one I grabbed there is a winter blend. So again, that one's packed in the high fat. All right, so cleaning and weatherproofing. It is very important to clean your feeders. If you're still not seeing your birds back at your feeders, I recommend that you clean them. It may be that the seed has gotten old, gone rancid. When you fill them back up, you don't have to fill them all the way. Again, that's that same feeder I've talked about. That one has that Tree Nutty Plus in there. When you fill it up, only fill it a third to a half of the way until you see if your birds come back. But if you're not seeing your birds back at your feeder yet, my guess would be maybe that seed has gotten old and the birds are like, I don't want that in there. All right, so yeah, definitely clean your feeders. Clean them in a little bit of dishwashing liquid, rinse them really well, then dip them in a little bit of bleach and water solution, 1 part bleach, 9 parts water, swirl them around in there a bit, then rinse them really well, let them dry, and then refill them and try and see if that will bring your birds back. If your seed that you have is more than 3 months old, then I'm going to recommend don't fill it with the same seed. Get a different bag of seed. try that new bag of seed and see if that brings your birds back. If that brings them back, I'm going to guess that seed has gone rancid and put that out in the woods. I'm sure the squirrels would be thrilled to eat that. I don't think they turn their nose up at anything. And then weatherproofing. Um, so this is what I'm talking about with weatherproofing. I always recommend adding weather guards to your feeders. If you don't have our feeders, you can just pop in here, either bring the feeders, bring pictures, and we can help you find weather guards to fit your feeders. It will save you money on seed when it's raining, when it's snowing. If you have weather guards on them, it will still bring the birds to your feeders. That is a weather guard. If you heard me say that, that's a weather guard. That is not a squirrel baffle. I know you'll see them sold out there as squirrel baffles. That is not a squirrel baffle. To be a squirrel baffle, it has to be bigger around for the squirrel to hang from the top all the way to the edge. It has to be a bigger distance than the squirrel is. So we do have one here that is a squirrel baffle, but it's a pretty big one. That little one is not a squirrel baffle. That's just to protect it from the elements. So be careful when you buy those called squirrel baffles. Okay, so more feeders, a more bigger variety of feeders is going to bring you a bigger variety of birds. So birds have a favorite yard, but they also have a favorite feeder. So if you're finding that this feeder just isn't bringing a lot of action, put a different feeder there and see. Take those feeders and move them around. Finches, for instance, goldfinches prefer to eat from the highest spot available. So if your feeding station has 4 hooks on it, always hang your goldfinch feeder from the highest hook, because those goldfinch are finicky little birds and they want to eat from the highest spot available. So if you're not getting the action you want, switch feeders out, move the location around. That may be all it takes to bring the action back to your feeders. That's just showing you some different varieties. This is a little green cage that I've mentioned a few times. It definitely works. That is our smallest woodpecker that we have around here. That's the downy woodpecker. And as you can see, that little guy fills it up pretty good. That's the male downy, by the way. You see the little red spot on the head? If it didn't have the red spot, it would be the female. But that downy is filling it up all the way. So when you talk about some of our larger woodpeckers, you can see that that would be a pretty small feeder. So that's where using one that has the tail prop would be helpful to bring you in some larger woodpeckers. And then our blue jays there, they love, love, love those peanuts in the shell. And then our little Carolina wren over there. And there you can see, this is in my backyard, and those weather guards are very helpful. I would have lost so much seed from that snowstorm had we not had weather guards on all of those feeders. But as you can also see, the birds continue to feed with all that snow. And then we're going to talk a little bit about water and shelter. If you have always wanted to have bluebirds, but you've never been lucky enough to get them, winter is your best time to get bluebirds in. So the first year we live in a very wooded area, everything bluebirds do not want. They like wide open space. The first year I added this heated bird bath was the first year I got bluebirds. Bluebirds are a member of the thrush family, which is a water-loving bird, and that's all it took. By adding a heated bird bath, you suddenly are not competing against all of your neighbors to get the bluebirds in, because they are looking for that yard that has fresh water during the winter. The rest of the year, how many of your neighbors are feeding the birds? Lots of them. But if you're that one yard in the winter that has a heated bird bath, you're like the Kool-Aid mom. You've got the bird bath, they're coming to your yard. So with a heated bird bath, you do have to have an electrical outlet where you can plug it in, but it's basically the same type of outlet you would use for your Christmas lights. You plug it in there. It's not going to be warm inside. If you put your hand in, it's going to be ice cold. It's thermostatically controlled. It just keeps it above freezing. We don't want them out there in a hot tub. We want them using what they would find in nature, basically. But we don't want them down taking baths in the salt, chemical treated side of roads. We want them to have access to fresh water. Birds need to keep their feathers clean. If you've ever noticed how fat the birds look in the wintertime, because they fluff up their feathers to form pockets of insulation. If they're not able to keep their feathers clean, they're not able to form those pockets of insulation. So they need to not only drink, which is obvious, but they also need to be able to bathe and keep those feathers clean. So having access to fresh water is extremely important for all the birds, but particularly those little bluebirds. It's a good way to entice them into your yard instead of your neighbors. So you can we have bird baths that have the heaters built into them. We also have de-icers. If you already have that favorite bird bath that you just love, you can add the de-icer right into your current bird bath. So that's an option too. And then shelter. So if you have houses that are already up, if you did not clean them out after nesting season, I'm going to ask that you go do that tomorrow. Go ahead and just get those cleaned out because there's a good chance that they're sleeping in those at night. So it's better if they're cleaned. You can add a little bit of wood chips into them. So this is just like it sounds, wood chips. So if yourself or your husband does woodworking, go out in the shed and grab just some wood chips and drop in there. Or we do sell bags of wood chips right here in the store that you can get. They are $3.99 for this bag, which will do several houses or last year a couple years. And just put an inch or two in the bottom of those houses, which will give them a little soft spot to land on to sleep on at night. You can also use, that is Carolina wren. I have a pair that sleeps in that little house, which is, to give you an idea how tiny this little thing is. It is just a little tiny thing. And two of them sleep in it every night. I've got a couple of these out. I also have these little gourds. These hang right on my front porch. And every night they go into those to sleep. Any little shelters like this that you can add out are great for them to sleep in. Those Carolina wrens, a lot of birds we talk about, that they mate for life, but most of them during non-nesting season, they're off doing their own thing. The Carolina wrens are paired up 365 days a year. So that pair are sleeping in there every night. We watch them go in together. These cold days, we're seeing them during the day in those a lot too. So those, if you can hang on your porch or somewhere close to the house, you actually get to see their activity during the day. Carolina wrens in particular love to be close to their people. So hanging them close to the house or a bush or something close to the house, you'll actually offer them shelter, but you get to see the activity too. So a good variety of foods and a good variety of feeders will bring a great variety of birds, and you get to sit back and enjoy the show. So I'm going to stop share and then we can talk about any questions you have.
Okay, so our first question, uh, Karen asked, how often do you recommend cleaning the feeders?
So during the busy season, I would recommend about every 3 weeks or so. Um, if it's been a dry season and it's not really busy, you can go 4 or 5 weeks. But if you're not getting any activity, I would change it more often than to see if that's the problem.
You kind of at the end mentioned this. You had talked about bluebirds getting in the nest box at night to keep warm. And I was out there the other day and there was definitely something in there. Do you think it was I didn't dare open it. You
Right.
think it was the bluebirds?
Is it a bluebird house?
Yes.
Very possibly. Bluebirds, Carolina wren, chickadee, titmice, or even downy woodpeckers would be my guess.
Ah, so so they might be in there during the day also then.
Yes. So
Okay.
we have a bluebird house that has a smart camera on it, so you can see what's going in it. And so my bluebirds are in it a lot during the day, but I've also seen Carolina wrens going in mine too, and on occasion chickadee.
Is there anything you can do to prevent other birds like sparrows from using the bluebird houses?
There is, and there's a whole lot of things. That one I would recommend that you definitely join us in February for our talk on bluebirds, or stop into the store because there's like a whole lot of, I'm assuming you're talking house sparrows. And so, yeah, there's a whole lot to cover to keep house sparrows out. And there's a particular type of house. Hang on one second. Let me grab one of those. We also have this kind of house that you can use. And house sparrows aren't a big fan of going into this, but also as well, if house sparrows do go in, one of the problems with house sparrows is they kill bluebirds. And so if house sparrows go in here, it still gives a spot for the bluebirds to get out. But if you're having problems with house sparrows, that's a much bigger problem that we'll need to work on. Um, but as far as having bluebird houses up.
Okay. Cheryl says her yard is flooded with blackbirds who want to eat up all the food. What do you recommend?
Safflower or cages. So we have cages that we can put on your feeders, depending on the types of feeders you have. And then if it's not feeders that we can cage, then we recommend using safflower. We can put safflower is a hard seed that the blackbirds aren't able to crack, but your other birds, most of your other birds can. So your best case scenario is a mixture of safflower in some and cages in on the others. So get this focus there. Safflower, it looks like sunflower, but don't mix them up because the blackbirds would be really happy if you gave them sunflower chips. But safflower is a really hard seed.
Okay. What else can you give bluebirds besides mealworms?
Ah, hang on one sec. So one of their favorite is this bluebird bugberry blend. And if you tune in to our Facebook Live on Thursday at noon, you'll get to see me dine on this too. And yes, it does have mealworms in it, and it has our bark butter bits, which is made of beef suet, and it's going to be disgustingly gross. But I told the team if they met their sales goal, I would eat it. So Thursday at noon on Facebook Live, it's happening. But no, seriously, that is happening seriously. But the bluebirds love this stuff. When it was being created, I tested it at my house, it's not only the favorite foods of the bluebirds, but it's also chopped to the bluebirds' preferred bite size. So this stuff is amazing. But bluebirds aren't able to crack their own shells, so you want to offer things out of the shell. So the mealworms, as you already mentioned, but berries, um, sunflower chips, things that are already shelled. Those
Okay.
bark butter bits we talked about, that's a favorite. I think the bluebirds are going to like that way more than I am.
Um, how close to the house or garage can you put the heated bird bath?
Uh, you can put it as close as you want. And we actually, if you have a wooden deck rail, we have one that mounts right on a wooden deck rail. So yeah, you could put it right up against the, very close to it. It would be fine.
Okay. Kate wanted to know for the Carolina Wrens, do they have preferences as far as where the houses are located? If you hang from your porch, such as morning sun or near bushes or things like that?
They prefer them on porches close to their people. They really like to be close to houses.
And Bob said, is sour gum something that the birds are eating? Some mysteriously grew up around his yard after he started attracting birds, and none of the blends he'd use had sour gum in them. Also, he definitely is going to get some Burberry blend ASAP for some bluebirds.
Yeah. Hey, sour gum chip? That wouldn't be right.
No.
No, don't know on the sour gum where that would have come from.
Are there any tips on ways to attract Baltimore Orioles, or what's the best time of year to get them?
Yeah, so if you'd had asked me 4 years ago, I would have always told you in the spring and in the fall when they're migrating. And if you follow our Facebook page, we always tell people, hey, get your grape jelly out there. It's time for them to be coming through, grape jelly and oranges, because during migration season, that is what they're eating. But in the winter, when they're here, every time we ask a customer, we can count on it. They're eating peanut splits, bark butter bits, and mealworms. They're always going for those high fat foods in the winter months. So if you want to try to get them to stop by now, definitely go for the higher fat foods. Um, the bark butter bits, obviously, that's a form of suet, so they're coming for that. Then those peanut splits, again, high fat. Um, yeah, it over the last, what it is, in my opinion, since we're having the milder winters the last several years, they're not going as far south as what they used to for migration.
Okay, do we have any more questions for Barb? Anything else that you're dying to know? Let me check and make sure I didn't skip any. Okay, it looks like that's everything. The next one in February, Become a Bluebird Landlord, is on Thursday, February 5th.
There's one more question there. I'm going to grab a feeder to show. Somebody's asking about the bluebird feeder.
Yep,
Let
somebody
me
asked about the
grab that.
Bluebird feeder.
So we've got a couple different ones. So this is one that can be used. And again, I've grabbed a weather guard for it, but this is just a multiple cup feeder. One of our teammates was just telling me yesterday that he's using bark butter bits in this and he's having to fill it every day to keep it full. So there's that one. And then this one is actually my favorite for the bluebirds. So pops up here. You're going to put your food in here. This is what I use for my bluebird bugberry blend. Top comes off. Bottom comes off, nice and easy to clean. So you've got 3 pieces there, very simple to clean. The food's protected in that top because it's solid. and then the birds can just land on it. Everybody from cardinals to juncos, the chickadees, titmice, and then of course the blue on it helps attract the bluebirds into it. But that's my go-to for the bluebird bugberry blend in that one.
All right. I think that's everything, everybody. Thank you very much.